You probably already know that reselling in the vintage clothing niche is one of the most profitable niches to be in. But in this video, I'm going to be sharing something even more profitable than that. And that is antique clothing and accessories. There is a huge market out there right now for these types of items. And in this video, I'm going to be giving you specifically 16 different item types to be on the lookout for. If you're new here, then welcome to the channel. My name is Lee Meyer. I'm a stay-at-home mom of four, and I've made well over $100,000 flipping used clothes and other items on sites like eBay, Poshmark, and Mercari. And now I'm on a mission to help at least 1,000 resellers be able to hit that $100,000 mark for themselves. To help you out, I've got a ton of free goodies. You're gonna find them down here in the description below this video. This includes things like my best brands list, the list of brands that has led me to the $100,000 mark and beyond. You're also going to find a link down there to sign up for my free $100,000 reseller challenge. In that free challenge, I show you exactly how to hit $100,000 for yourself this year. It's not about putting in more time. It's not about working harder. And I show you exactly how in that challenge. You're also going to discover the very best things to be selling right now in today's market. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with the topic of this video. And we're gonna be diving into antique clothing and clothing accessories. And I am so excited about this because there is such a big market out there for these types of items. And they might be a little bit more rare to come across when you're out at the thrift store, but there's plenty of other places where you're gonna run into these types of items, such as garage sales and estate sales. So let's go ahead and dive on in and help you start finding some very profitable items. All right, so the first item type that I have for you to be on the lookout for are antique bathing suits. Now, with a lot of these items that we're going to be going through, almost all of the items that we're going to be going through, they don't have tags in them. That just comes with the territory when you're selling these older items. So we're going to talk a little bit how to identify some of these items, how to identify some of the ages of these items. I'm also going to be talking a little bit more about those clothing tags here in a second. So the item that you're looking at, it does have a tag on it there. But one of the ways to be able to identify some of these older items is to look at the stitching. So right here, they're showing a flaw, but you're also going to notice with the stitching on this item. So for example, the double stitching right here, you can clearly see that doesn't look like today's stitching where everything is stitched by machine. A lot of these items, are handmade. And so you're seeing that there in the stitching of the item. So that is one way to be able to identify older items like this. So this one is actually a set. This is a full bathing suit, top and bottom. That one sold for $95. This next one is another antique bathing suit. There is what that looks like. And with almost all of these items, because of the age of them, flaws are just part of them. So you do need to still clearly identify those flaws. This one sold for $100, by the way. Just know that not everything is going to be in perfect condition. Actually, very few and far between items are going to be in perfect condition. Almost everything is going to have either holes or stains or rips or tears. So this is another bathing suit, and you can see it's got a few holes there in it. It does also have a tag there. Unlike most of these items, this one is pushing kind of what you would consider antique. By the way, by definition, antique is 100 years old and older. I always get asked when I do vintage videos, how old is vintage? Vintage, for the record, is about 20 years old. Some people will say 25 years old, but approximately, that age range for vintage. Antique, is much older than that. So this one is actually from the 1930s. And so that one is not quite maybe vintage yet. It's almost there. Speaking of tags, I do want to quickly mention, I did look up, when did brands, companies have to start putting tags in clothing? And this is what it came back in the search results was that in 1960, and you can kind of read more about this, but they had to identify the different fabrics that were in the garment, the different care instructions. So that was, in the 1960s when that started happening. The next category of items to look for when it comes to antique clothing and accessories, this is one that definitely falls into more of the accessory category, and that is fans. So this one does happen to be hand painted. I am in no way an antique expert, but there is a signature down here or an autograph down there by the designer. This one has mice on it. That is that theme. A lot of these are very ornate. So you can see all of the details, all of the lace, all of the different, there's even an angel there all between all of those mice. But that one sold for $370. It did have 5 bids on it. So when items sell on auction, I usually always try to mention if it was an auction listing and how many bids there were. Otherwise, in most of my other videos, everything is fixed price. This category, this video is going to have a lot more auction style listings just because of the nature of these items and because they are rare, because there is a market for them. This is another one of those antique fans. So you can see there's a landscape scene on there along with some lace. Here's what that one looks like. That one sold for $81. And then that one had 4 bids on it. This is another fan of a little bit different version. So this is actually a paper fan. That one sold for $75. All right, the next category to look for are blouses. So this is a blouse right here. And again, with almost all of these items, there are not going to be tags. For everybody that loves brand tags, you're not going to get it with this video. With this does have a lot of flaws on this item, as with all of these items that we're going to be looking at. None of them are in mint condition just because of the age. We're talking in the 1800s. This is, well over 100 years old for this item. That one sold for $125. This is another blouse here. And we're going to be talking a little bit more about the styles a little bit later on in this video, but this one sold for $60 with 1 bid on it. This is another blouse here. You can see some of the detailing there with the stitching. That one sold for $145. This one has sequins, some beadwork on it. This one does have a lot of flaws. If I go through all of these pictures, that one actually does have a tag there. So I'm going to zoom in on that. It says McDonald and then Portland, Oregon. But this one does have a lot of flaws throughout this item. Definitely not in the best of condition, but that one sold for $245. The next type of item to look for, and this is another accessory type of item. These are parasols. So with this one, you're seeing a split in the seam here. You're seeing some loose thread with those beading. This one has a lot of what looks like maybe even mildew on it. There's another glimpse at, that mildew. So here's what that looks like. And then that one sold for $225. We got another style here, and this one sold for $91. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on that one. $91. That one had 23 bids on that. This is one I had pulled up there where there's a stain. So again, don't shy away from these items, even if they have stains, even if they have, larger size holes. There is what that parasol looks like. Sold for $175. This next type of item to look for are hats. And this one that you're looking at is a bonnet. You can see that there is a large fish hole right there. There's also lots of staining on that bonnet. Give you a few more pictures of that. That one sold for about $60. By the way, everything that we're looking at are sold items. It does say down here in the corner of the picture, for those of you who come back and always say they're not really sold. Yes, these are sold items that we are looking at. This one is not a hat. It's more of a hair accessory item. And this one actually sold for, headband, headdress, whatever it is that you want to call it. That one sold for $80, and that had 4 bids on that item. So this is another hat, very unique style of hat. This one does say in the listing title that it is museum quality, but you're still going to see, some staining there around the edges, a little bit of fraying there on the edges of the hat. These items, just aren't perfect because of how old they are, and that's what makes them so unique. And that's what makes it so that people are really bidding on these items. So this one sold for $168 with just one bid on it. This one is a cloche. This one is a little bit maybe slightly on the newer side than 100 years old, than being, antique by definition. And this one, again, this is beaded just all the way around. That is a cloche from the 1940s. That one sold for $480. Now, if you want to dive into hats more, I do have a hat brand. I'm just going to mention that really quickly, but that is probably one of the most underutilized topics, niches for resellers. There can be big money in hats. So this is another hat that's actually a top hat. It does have a marking in it. It's Sinclair & Co. in London, and it is a satin top hat. That one sold for $225. We have a toque hat here with some feathers, some flowers on there. That one went for $165, again, with one bid on it. This is what is called a platter style hat. And you can see on here, I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on that for you, but you can see there how this is pretty much threadbare around the rim of that. And that is, again, with all of these items, you're going to see wear like that. You're going to see items that are threadbare. I'm going to zoom in there too. All around the brim of that hat is completely threadbare. There's another good look, just how threadbare that item is. It does have this huge ostrich plume there, but that was for $245. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on that price for you there. $245 for that item, not even in the best of condition. All right, the next item to be on the lookout for are needlework purses. So this one here that you're looking at, I'm going to zoom in so you can get a little bit better look at that needlework. But that's the entire bag is needlework, a floral pattern. This one sold for $65. This is another example of needlework. There's a bird and a tree. We're going to be talking a little bit more about these frames here in a little bit. This one sold for $200. All right, the next type of item to look for are hair clips. So this one that you're looking at, it has a cameo there at the center of the clip. This one actually is a set of 3 for this listing. That one sold for $155. This is another hair clip, and this is what is called Bakelite. So this is kind of an early version of plastic. This is a plastic clip. This is from the 1920s-ish, by the way. This one sold for $125. Got another example here for you from a more Victorian look to this item. That one sold for $150. All right, next are dresses. Now, I have a ton here for you because there are so many good items. I did most of this research on eBay, as you're noticing, but I did pull in this one from Poshmark just because I have to come across it. There are antique era items selling on Poshmark as well, so don't forget about some of those other platforms. So this is an example of an antique era dress. This is from the 1890s, and this one sold for $290 for that dress. This one, this is back over on eBay. This one has got a lot of detailed beadwork there at the hem of the dress. That one sold for $650. And that one is 1920s era, and you can tell that by that drop waist. So you can see the drop waist right about there with my cursor, and that was popular from that. So when you're identifying these era from the different types of items, you can base it off of the style. And the thing that you can do, because a lot of these items you're going to find when you're out at garage sales or estate sales, in those cases, you are able to maybe get some history on the item to be able to ask the seller, if they know anything about it, where did it come from? And maybe you can get the story behind that and be able to identify, what kind of decade it's from, be able to pinpoint that a little bit better if you're not not sure. So this is a dress here that you're looking at that sold for $395, estimated to be from the 1860s. So this is from the 1920s era dress that you're looking at. That one sold for $96, and that one had 3 bids on it. Of course, the older the item, usually the prices go up. So even with the items now that are Y2K, that are trending, it's not going to go away as those items become more rare, as they become antiques. 70, 80 years down the road, they're going to be even more valuable. So, if you hang on to things, go ahead and hang on to things even more, I guess. I don't know what the moral of the story is there. This one is a dress that is a pretty much solid lace with this item. Unfortunately, they've got most of these pictures folded, so you're not able to get a good look at the dress overall. There it is, like half folded in half. But that one sold for $300. I do want to point out some of the keywords as we're going through these. So Edwardian as well as prairie, in addition to antique. Reserve that antique keyword for items that are truly antique, though. That would be my caution there. So this is another Victorian style dress, and that one sold for $289. You're also going to see the keyword in here of morning gowns, and so that is a common term as I was going through dresses doing this type of research. Dresses were kind of categorized by the events that they were worn for. We're going to be talking a few more of those here coming up, but that is one of the terms just to be aware of if you do happen to find a dress from those older eras. This is another dress here that I've got to show you, that this one sold for $148. One's estimated to be from right around the turn of the century. So I did mention Edwardian. I think I've mentioned Victorian as we're going through these. Now, those terms are also popular in today's styles and currently made styles. And that is on my keyword poster that sell, along with in total on that poster, there are 80 different style-based, aesthetic-based keywords. I'm going to link to that resource over here, but it makes it super helpful to remember these different terms and these different styles as you're listing items. So we've got another lace dress over here on eBay. That one sold for $96. Again, you're seeing Edwardian up there in the title, and that one had 7 bids on it. This one is a nightgown style of dress. This one, that is what that looks like overall. That one had 39 bids on it, and that one sold for $94 after those 39 bids. So some of the other terms that you're seeing up here are primitive, as well as Victorian. This one, I had to point out the stains on these because, like I've mentioned throughout this video, don't shy away from items that have stains. These items are stained. That's just, what happens. So with this dress, this is a tiered dress. They did use some keywords in here of summer and tea and wedding, as well as Titanic. That one sold for $182 with 3 bids on it. This one is what is called a lawn dress. So you're seeing some of the details. Let me see if I can go ahead and zoom in on that there for you. That's there on the sleeve. This one actually sold for $550, estimated to be right around the turn of the century, 1890s to 1900s. This is another really interesting one. Here, it's got that detail across the front, some embroidery there. You're seeing a little bit closer up there, you're seeing some smocking there. That one sold for $251, and that one had 24 bids. Now, I had to throw this one in because this is very closely related to clothes, even though it is not clothes. These are actually antique hangers, and you're seeing some different brands on those hangers. And that set of hangers, there's 30 of them in that set. There's the total set. That set of hangers sold for $135. So if you're out at a garage sale, whatever that is, you come across these, just know that there is a market even for hangers like these. All right, this next item type are pants. And with this category, this is a little bit smaller category, but there are some different items to be aware of when it comes to antique pants. And one of those are military pants. So the pants that you're looking at right now are actually Navy pants from the US Navy. We got a size tag there, and you can see that how that size is stamped onto that tag. Here's what those pants look like. Let's see if I can get you some more pictures of those. There's actually two of these sold. I'm going to show you the other one here really quick. The other one does have a little bit better of a tag picture for you. These do have a tag picture, by the way, just because it is the US Navy. This pair of pants sold for, are you seeing that price? $13,999.99. That one had 37 bids on it. This is another similar pair of pants. This auction ended the exact same day from the same seller. There is the tag there. You can see that there's an inspector number on that tag as well. I would think that this was maybe the same item, just auctioned twice, but they did end the same exact day. And then that one sold for $3,850, and that one had 24 bids. This is a men's pair of pants that you're looking at, circa 1920s for this pair. That one sold for $125. This next type of item to be on the lookout for is what is called an enameled purse. And this is a flapper style from right around the 1920s era. And so what this is, I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on this so you can see the detail a little bit better. But this is enameled on the outside, but it's kind of a mesh bag, and I'll show you what it looks like. I do have a better picture to be able to show you here in a second, but definitely a flapper look to these bags. That one sold for $150, but there's lots of these selling of this stuff. So what you're looking at, this is actually the inside of the bag, and that's that mesh that I was referring to, that these bags are constructed with, and then that enameling is there on the outside of the bag. So here is what that one looks like. That one sold for $60, and there's lots of this style that are selling. So here's another similar, Art Deco flapper style, 1920s-ish era. That one sold for $80. I want to take a second to invite you to check out the Empowered Reseller membership program. This is where I'm able to connect with members inside of my program. I'm even able to do things like store reviews, account reviews, listing reviews. It's where I'm doing live trainings with my members each and every month, as well as getting those questions answered. It comes with a huge course vault, as well as you get access to our exclusive VIP community for that support and accountability to help you succeed. You'll find the link in the description below this video to be able to go and get all of the details and to be able to join for yourself. And I hope to be able to welcome you into our community soon. The next category of items to be on the lookout for, I lumped together of kids and babies items. So what you are looking at, and a lot of these within this category are lotted together like what you're seeing here, of a lot or a set of hats and bonnets. So this actually included 23 different baby bonnets. That one sold for $125. This one is a sweet little pair of baby boots. And you can see on these, not the best of pictures. They're a little bit on the blurry side, but you can see that these are hand stitched. Definitely, not machine stitched. Definitely not made like items from today. Again, that's how you can be able to identify the age on a lot of these items. So this pair of shoes actually sold for $250. This one is a set that includes an apron as well as that parasol. This is actually a size approximately 2T for a 2-year-old. That one sold for $149 for that set. All right, the next category that I've got for you are shoes and boots. So this one actually does have a tag here on the inside, and it even has a date on it. So if you look up here at the date, it says February 18, 1901. And this is John Everett Shoe Company. I'll go ahead and show you what those look like. There's the bottom of those shoes. You're seeing there a lot of the creasing in the leather, some scuffing there at the toe, a lot more creasing up there in the shaft of the boot. Even got some holes there on the inside fabric. There's what those boots look like. Those sold for $200, even in that condition. Now, this pair of boots, I absolutely love the style, the look of these. You can see they are discolored. They do have a lot of age to them. A best offer was accepted. I usually do try and go and look those up for you, but I am having some login issues with eBay. So I will link to a video up here where I actually walk you through step by step how to be able to look up sold prices when a best offer was accepted. So again, I will link somewhere up here to that video. All right, this is not a pair of boots, but a pair of shoes here for women. That one sold for $115, and this is early 1900s-ish era for those shoes. Another pair of boots here with those buttons there that I just love the look of these. And this one sold for $145 for those. Another pair of bootsies happen to have laces on this pair. That one sold for $142. Now, this next category of item is not a clothing item, but I had to throw it in here because this can oftentimes be mixed into clothing items, or maybe people who don't know that it's not a clothing item, might mistake it for a shawl or a wrap or something like that. But these are actually piano scarves, and there is a really good market for these types of items. I've actually sold a few of these myself, and they will almost all have fringe around the edges of those items. So this one happens to be floral, but there's lots of different styles of these that are selling. This one is embroidered, and these can sell for, in $100 to $200 price point. This one sold for $150, of course, depending on the style, depending on the condition. So here is another one of those piano shawls, and you're seeing the flower detailing there on that. It's a common theme. Not all piano shawls, do have that. So for $225, we got another piano shawl here, a little bit more on the quiet side, just white on white. And that one sold for $112. Well, the topic of this video is antique clothing. I do want to quickly mention my guide to selling vintage clothing. That's going to be a little bit more common to come across than some of these items that are 100 plus years old. And inside of that vintage clothing guide, I actually give you 150 different brands, items to be on the lookout for. It is a very helpful resource and one of the most profitable niches, in addition to the antique niche that we're talking about for this video. So I'm going to link to that over here. This next category of items are beaded bags. Now, I know we've already looked at enameled bags as well as needlepoint, but these specifically have beadwork on them. So I do have a close-up here to be able to show you those beads. There's also some fringe there that is beads. Here's what that purse looks like. Again, this is very 1920s style for this bag. One sold for $138. We have another beaded bag here. See if I can go ahead and get a little bit bigger picture there for you. And then that one sold for about $80 for that one. Another beaded bag here, a little bit different style, a little bit brighter color for this one. I love what this seller did with the color palettes on the side, so there's no mistaking what that is. That one actually sold for $170. This is another example of a beaded bag with that peacock there, as well as roses. That one sold for $350. Now, I mentioned earlier in the video about those tops of the bags, the hardware of the bags, and there are surprisingly a lot of hardware selling. And this is an example of what I mean by that purse frame. This one had 10 bids on it and it sold for almost $100, like $97. They did say in the title, metal has not been tested, so they didn't check if the clasps work or anything like that. We've got another frame there. That one sold for $175. These are silver. This is one of the reasons why these are selling for a little bit more money, but it surprised me just how many of these are out there. I'm not sure if the rest of the purse disintegrated or, what is going on. So there's that frame there for this one. That one sold for $150. This next category of item are corsets. So this one has a lot of staining to it. Pretty much the entire thing is stained of what you're looking at. It's even really hard to see the item with that background that they're using there. That one had 3 bids on it. They do say, as is, flaws, rust stains. 3 bids on it, and that one went for $102.50. Got another corset here. This is actually a child size. It is missing the laces. If you look in the details of that item, they do spell out that that is missing the laces. That one still sold for $60. And then got one more example here for you that does have the laces. That one sold for $195, and that one had 1 bid on it. All right, so I'd love to know if you've come across any items like this when you're outsourcing. Maybe you've even sold some. Drop it in the comments and go ahead and share with the community. Thank you so much for hanging out with me for today's video. And if you're looking for other vintage items, older items to be on the lookout for, I do have lots of other videos. I'm going to link to one of them up here. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I will catch you in the next video soon.